Okay, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to twitch.tv/TSSZ News and a very cool, very special one-off episode of TSSZ Plays, where we're going to be taking a look at some of the beta versions of Sonic the Hedgehog 2 on the Sega Genesis. Now, this is going to be a really fun episode. We're going to be digging deep into... I've picked out 3 of the demos for us to take a... not demos, betas, for us to take a look at today. And what I've kind of done is arrange them in chronological order according to when they were in the game's development. So the earliest betas come first, and the later betas will obviously come after that, so we can kind of have a little fun and see how the game's progressed throughout its development cycle. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and load up the first of the 3 betas that I have for you, and this is what's commonly known as the Nick Arcade beta of the game. In case you're not familiar with this whole story, there are multiple beta versions of Sonic 2 that have made their way across the internet over time. I won't say exactly how many because you might need to stew on that information for later, but we have a really good sense of how Sonic 2 came together over the course of its development because we have so many of those beta versions available. So we're going to kick on the emulator here and get things started. So, like I was kind of hinting at before, the first beta that I'm going to be showing you here is called, or what's kind of known in the community as the Nick Arcade beta of the game. This is the earliest version of the game that is known to exist amongst all of the other ones, and it looks like it didn't load up properly, so give me 1 second here. There we go. Emulator problems. So, like I said, the Nick Arcade version of the game is the earliest version of the game that's known to exist. Give me 1 second here to prep debug mode, because to get around in some of the levels, we're going to need debug mode available. So, like I was saying, the Nick Arcade prototype, which is what you're seeing right now, and a little spoiler alert, you're going to see exactly how much of this has changed. This is the earliest known prototype of Sonic 2 to exist. It's based on a version of the game that was shown on an episode of Nick Arcade, I believe in early 1992, and it is indeed the earliest known version of the game to have existed. You're going to see a ton of changes that were made throughout the development cycle. It's in an incredibly unpolished and unfinished state, and you're going to see that right now if I can punch in the debug code correctly. Give me 1 second here. Alright, so you can see right off the bat here that we have basically the exact same level select as you would see in Sonic 1. This game is so early in development that they haven't even changed the level select, and you'll see exactly how much it mirrors Sonic 1 in just a couple of minutes here. So we're going to go ahead and actually go to Starlight Zone, because this is what's going to be Emerald Hill in this game. You're going to see just how early it is. I'm going to check the chat quickly before we get started here. Shadowbane had no idea there were beta versions of Sonic 2, and ooh, are you in for a treat. Just you wait here. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and kick things off. Now, right off the bat, you're going to notice that there's no tails. You know, I can move around, do whatever. There is no tails. Because of some issues that Tails had in early versions of the game, I believe they disabled him for the Nick Arcade presentation of this game. So we're just going to go ahead and take a look around here. I don't know that I got debug mode on, but that's okay. Anyway, you'll notice a lot of weird little quirks in Sonic's movement. Some of his sprites are different. He's got some more animation in places you wouldn't necessarily expect. The level design is fairly different as well, which you'll see. You can see right there was some different stuff. You'll also notice that the spin dash, along with that little bug, is relatively incomplete. You can only charge it once. There's no spray of smoke coming after you, and you just kind of let it go, and it's a little bit lethargic. I'll let it roll here. Maybe we'll do it up here, just so I can show you how kind of slow it really is. And that's all you get out of the spin dash. Can't charge it up, can't do too much with it. And there we go. You'll also notice that much like in Sonic 1, your basic on-foot running speed is throttled a little bit. I'm going to do my best to show you that. Even running down steep slopes like you would expect, there's a ton of those guys everywhere. I'm going to try to avoid him. You can see in there, if you run into a wall, note that I just phased through a projectile, and if you bump into a wall at speed, you just kind of do that funny little face plant off of it. And here you can see his running speed is really throttled, and he sticks to the ground a lot. And if we keep going here, you're going to notice maybe some other fun things as we progress through this. A lot of weird little level design differences. You'll see a different signpost here at the end. By and large, Emerald Hill was more or less what you would expect it to be, as kind of the first stage that was really developed for the game. It's much farther along than the rest, as you will see. So like I said, there are just a ton of those guys. I can't remember there being that many in the final retail version of the game, but it has been a while since I've played it. One fun thing that I don't know that I'm going to be able to get to do at any point in these stages that I will tell you about is if you collect 100 rings in any stage in the Nick Arcade prototype, then the Death Egg music will play more or less indefinitely instead of the 1-up theme, like that. So imagine instead of hearing that when you get 100 lives, you just automatically start hearing, you know, the scary Death Egg March. That's a little spooky. So you can see a ton of different level design differences there, I believe. And like I said, some sprite differences. Controls are a little bit quirky in ways that are tough to describe. It feels just like Sonic 1 would basically, but with a little bit of a twist involved. That neutering of your on-foot running speed is really annoying. Just like how many of those dang guys there are. And nice little bit of clipping there. So we're going to go ahead and try and fight the boss here. Wherever he is. There we go. So it's more or less the boss fight that you would expect. Nothing super fancy about it. Like I said, this was obviously the first stage that they really worked on and finished for the game, so it makes sense for it to be in a more completed state. You can see that I guess they kept the tires in front of Sonic to have that little fun effect of them scrolling by, and that's it! The whole Nick Arcade demo, the whole Nick Arcade prototype is one finished zone in the game. So what else does that leave? So what happens if we go to Starlight Stage 3, for example? We didn't see any of that, and then, uh-oh. Oh, that's unfortunate. So, we're just going to kind of go ahead and let him flop around here. Only 2 acts in Emerald Hill. So be it. So we'll get the game over. Can I skip it? I can. And then we're going to now go ahead and start to look at some of the other unfinished zones in the game. We'll start with perhaps the most interesting one, Green Hill Zone. So, as you'll see, it is in fact Green Hill Zone, just as you remember it, sort of. So, you see anything wrong yet? How about that? Yeah, that's not right now, is it? Tails flying all over the place. Oh dear, what's going on, I wonder? Look at all these messed up graphics and... Oh, I fell through the floor and died. So as it turns out, the collision data for Sonic 2 is stored and handled differently than the collision data for Sonic 1. So while Green Hill Zone technically remains in the game at this point, so much has changed in starting to convert the game over to the foundations for Sonic 2 that I really don't have debug mode here, so I don't know how far I'm going to get with this. So much work was done at this point to kind of start moving the game into Sonic 2, wow, that the original Green Hill Zone is just a disaster as a result. Now you can, with the help of Game Shark or Action Replay codes or something along those lines, wow, restore Green Hill Zone's collision data, but then that makes basically the rest of the game unplayable as it really messes with the collision and how the game works. Just messing with the webcam there a little bit. You can hear Tails, I think, just dying over and over again in the background. So what do we got here? Why do I hear the haters gonna hate when Sonic walks upwards? Lol, I don't know, Shadowbane. That I can't tell you. So we're gonna just take a look at one more zone in Green Hill just to kind of reinforce how totally broken it is. I'll see how far I can get. You can see when there's any sort of real slope involved, you just phase right through that baby. An Eggman monitor that's useless when I don't have rings. I didn't pick any of those up. I'm assuming Tails did. Stuck in a push pose. There are a couple other weird bugs I can try to pull out here for you. Like, for example, I don't know. There are some weird things you can do, like, I guess I have to be on a rock to do it. Bear with me here, and I will show you what I'm talking about. Oh, jeez. Maybe not. Maybe I have to be... So basically, what I'm trying to get at is when you push up against a rock and you jump... Nice. Maybe this one? No. On some rocks, I guess, not all of them, when you push against a rock and jump, Sonic will stay in his push pose as he jumps up and down, which looks really dumb, as you might expect. No! I'd be afraid to go that fast with this collision data. So we're just going to kind of make a little bit of progress here. I'm going to screw this up sooner or later. This is incredibly difficult. The camera spazzes out a lot. It's... oh man, there we go. Hills, it hates hills. This is the kind of mismatch here. It just... hills don't work. You basically have to jump all the way up the hill. Or you fall through and die. Oh man, this is tough. I don't know that I've ever actually... Wow, alright. I don't even want to talk about that one. Those are spikes, I guess. Sure. Can we finish an act here? We can finish an act! Tails just goes flying. We're trying to run off the screen here. And the act won't end until you do. Fun fact, at this point in development, Tails just mirrors Sonic's movements, so I can move him around on the screen freely. So now we're in Act 3. I guess we're going to see Act 3 after all. And dead. Same problems. Just slightly different atmospheres. Different levels. Oh man. Wow, is that broken. Cool! Just totally... Alright. So, let's move on to Marble Zone, or what would be Marble Zone. What do you think it is? Some little magic coming here for you. It's Chemical Plant! Look at that! Now, you'll notice, if you've ever seen screenshots or video footage of the Nick Arcade prototype, you'll know that it has that purple coloring for the buildings in the background there, which you can see on the screen right now. So that confirmed, beyond a shadow of a doubt at the time, that this is, in fact, the Nick Arcade prototype. You can see it's all working real nice. Now, if I recall correctly, a lot of Chemical Plant is not finished either, like these tubes. So it really kind of limits where you're able to go. You can see I just jumped over it and into this madness. So I'll try to break the game for as long as I can here, and we're going to kind of go as far as you can. You can see that there's no... and that's treated as a wall, so I guess we're stuck here. Not much help from the spin dash. You can see how much of it really does still need work. So even those core zones of the game are just really, really unfinished at this point. So, as you can imagine, this was very early along in its development. We may actually be at the end here. Not quite. I just fell back to where I was. I don't know that we're going to make it much farther here without debug mode, which sadly I was not able to activate. I could try again, but I'm going to have to reset, I think. That should retain my level select code, so I don't have to put that in again. Rare Foil makes a comment. Still better program than Sonic Heroes. Why not? So we'll take a look at Act 2 here. Oh, whoops. Who even knows what happened there? So, in one sense, you're just kind of stuck in the wall, I guess. There you go. Nice. Reset. So, I do kind of like the pink background in Chemical Plant. I'm kind of glad they changed it, but it does give it a much different vibe. So how about Act 3? Whoa! Literally the same thing as Act 1, but no rings. Aside from those, I guess. I thought there weren't any rings. It may load them from a different level, so you can see they're all slightly messed up. I believe, if I remember correctly, it's trying to load ring data from a different stage. The Act 3s in this game all, in this beta, kind of all act a little differently. Because they, I guess, never really intended to have 3 acts. Alright. See, the collision still has some work that needs to be done. It's all just very unfinished, and it's... if you're like me at all, this stuff is an absolute blast to explore. I love seeing games in unfinished states like this. You can kind of investigate how it all came together. It's an amazing snapshot of the game at some point in time. And like I said, this is just Act 1's layout again, which means we're going to get stuck here at some point, which means we're going to have to reset the game. So what else? We will move on to Spring Yard Zone, or what would be Spring Yard Zone. What is it, I wonder? Oh, it's Hidden Palace! In all its glory. Now, you're going to take a look here. You are going to take a look here. You're going to see that it's actually relatively complete, all things considered, especially in comparison to a lot of the other zones. There's enemies in here. The general layout for a lot of it is finished. You know, you saw a Tails monitor there. A lot of item mapping was changed in between Sonic 1 and Sonic 2. So now you can see an independent Tails monitor. It even has breaking platforms like that. With custom art and everything. It really is a beautiful looking zone. I wish they kept it in the game. Maybe you'll get to hear the 100 ring thing after all. Maybe that's in a different prototype. Anyway. Think about how unfinished even Chemical Plant was, and now look at how much was done on Hidden Palace. So this was absolutely one of the first stages that they worked on in Sonic 2, but for whatever reason, it was just never brought to fruition. So, if you know anything about this stage's layout, you'll know that there's supposed to be some kind of platform here, so you gotta do a tricky little maneuver that I may or may not be able to do. There we go. To get by. And we're gonna keep on investigating here. So again, the gimped spin dash makes it kind of tough to get up walls sometimes. And there's the Master Emerald, sort of. I believe people have said after the fact that it's just something to stop that thing. Like a little stopper in a test tube. Who knows? So we obviously can't go that way, and this is a dead end, I believe, because you can't get up this, obviously. So, with all my rings gone, let's go ahead and reset. We'll take a look at Act 2 quickly, which I believe is just going to kind of be more of the same. We want to get to the really funky, weird stuff here. And we're stuck in a wall. Cool. Okay. Right back out of that. You're going to get real sick of that Sega chant before this is over. Believe you me. I understand, Bravefoil. I get what you're saying. And whoops, we're just going to go flying through the stage, and there is the underwater bit programmed and all that, and oops. Guess we're dead. Can we get anywhere else? There we go, we're out. Now you can see that this even is in a varying state of completion. Again, the Act 3s are all a little odd in this game. Or is this Act 2? I can't recall. Some graphics are missing. It looks like this actually is just Act 1's layout again, and now I'm underwater, and something's moving. And there's no rings, because the ring layout doesn't match, and I don't think I'm going to be able to get up there. So, can you imagine this? I don't think, even the number graphics don't work right. We're going to spare you that one. Oh, what else we got here, people? There's a lot to tear through. I'll give Act 3 a quick shot. Oh, that was Act 3. Okay. So, here's some of the fun stuff now. How about Labyrinth Zone? What do you think Labyrinth Zone is going to be? Maybe some other weird thing? Oh, no, it's total garbage! Goodbye, Sonic! Have fun, bye-bye! It's complete crap. Again, I don't have debug mode on, but if I did, I could go to the right, and you'll see just garbage data from Chemical Plant being loaded. So we're going to save the game over here. And all of Labyrinth Zone is like that. Including... I'm not sure, okay. It's all pretty much the same. It's got a weird mix of Labyrinth Zone's water effect with graphics from Chemical Plant, and it's really bizarre. So as we saw already, Starlight Zone is just Emerald Hill. So how about Scrap Brain? What's going on with Scrap Brain Zone? I believe It is, yes, it's Hilltop. So, you'll see Hilltop in a varying state of completion as well. These lifts don't all work. You'll also see that's supposed to be an enemy, a distinct enemy type. You'll also see another unique bit here. Tails can lose rings for you, which is likely why he was cut out of the Nick Arcade demo in Emerald Hill specifically. You also see that those guys down there are supposed to be their own distinct enemy type, and right now they're just a placeholder graphic, and I can't move the camera down. So there you go. Look at that. So we're gonna traipse through most of Hilltop, actually, because there is something cool at the end that I want to show you. Oh, look, lava doesn't hurt me. Oh, whatever. So we're just going to kind of mow through this quickly. What a mess it is. Thank you, Tails. Appreciate that, buddy. Just walk through lava like it's no big deal. It's really what matters here. You can just bump into those guys all day. Who cares? I do have to be a little careful because I don't want to die as we get close to the end here. Just kind of flop off of that. No tiles there to break through. So we're just going to kind of flop around through this. Glad I can get out of that. There are some bottomless pits at this point, and I'll show you why. So the hill half works. You also notice that, I guess, rings just stop being placed after a while, so it really gives you a sense for, you know, this act has a long way to go. Is this the pit? That might have been the pit. So, fun fact, if I keep going down this thing... Oh, look, I'm dead! So, they never resized the level to accommodate Hilltop. Well, not yet, anyway. So there may be additional level beyond that point, but the game is still using Scrap Brain's dimensions. Whoops. So, that's a no-go. You're going to die automatically. Rarefoil asks if I plan to get a gamepad. I guess for the PC, no, I don't plan on getting a gamepad. The most sinister, peaceful hilltop ever. And Rarefoil, was that the fabled Genocide City? No, it is not, and we'll be getting to that in another beta. What about Scrap Brain Act 3? That was based on Labyrinth Zone tiles, right? Yep. Same palette as Scrap Brain Act 3. But still garbage because it's all based on Labyrinth Zone. So the last thing that I want to kind of show you is Final Zone. So as you may know, Final Zone is kind of tucked away in a chunk of Hilltop. So we're going to load into it just fine. But here's a fun little thing that happens. I crashed to purple. What happened? So when you get a certain way into Final Zone, it triggers one of the Eggman cutscenes, and that's not present anymore because so much has changed in the game. So you just have a hard crash instead. Oops. A little awkward, but what are you going to do? There is actually, I lied, there's one more thing I want to show you. But it hard crashed me, so I'd have to put the level select code in again, I guess. Let's actually go ahead and do that, because I think this is pretty cool. You'll probably disagree, but check this out. Is that it? There we go. I missed it! Each of these betas, I believe, have different ways to get into the level select, so I kind of have a little cheat sheet. I go to select the special stage, crash. That's really fun. So, nice little fuzzing, hissing fuzz for you. So I'm going to go ahead and load up the next game, which is, so that was the Nick Arcade prototype, the earliest known beta of Sonic 2 that is known to exist. It's obviously in a really unpolished state. It's really fun to take a look at. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at the next prototype of the game, which is known as the Simon Y beta, and that's, I believe, named after... hold on a second. I got to put the debug code in right at the start here. Okay, so you can see we're a lot farther along in the Simon Y prototype, which is named, I believe, after the guy who unearthed this way back in, I believe, 1999. And it's probably the most famous of the Sonic 2 betas that are known to exist. It is much more polished, much more complete. You can see a much more fleshed out level listing here, actually in computer talks of Stage 0 and Stage 1 instead of Stage 1 and Stage 2, like you would see and present it to non-computer folks, I suppose. So we're going to get into a bunch of these right now. Starting with Green Hill Zone. But of course, it's not Green Hill Zone. It's Emerald Hill. You can see Tails is here. Still with the simple AI that follows Sonic. But you're going to see that it's going to start feeling a lot more like Sonic 2 feels like as we know it today. Much more polished, kind of much more finalized. Things that you would see in the Nick Arcade prototypes, such as... See, there you go. Feels a lot more like real Sonic 2. Still can't charge up the spin dash, but a lot of those weird like graphical oddities, like platforms phasing into each other, that's all taken care of now. Obviously, the collision detection still needs a little work. Tails can still lose rings for you, which is kind of a bummer. And if this is the prototype that lets me use... Now you can see also that the speed cap has been removed on foot, so that's really fun. If this is the one that plays the Death Egg music after 100 rings, we might have a little trouble doing that. If Tails is going to be a jerk about it. So what else? What else here? We can just tear through this stage. I don't know that I'll show both acts. It's a fun little animation for Sonic. Because it really is more or less Emerald Hill as we remember it in Sonic 2. It's pretty polished and complete at this point. And if we were actually to play the game through start to finish, as far as the beta lets you go, there's 4 finished zones, and I think you'll be able to see which ones they are. So... yes, Rarefoil, we did try the special stage in Sonic 1, or the original Nick Arcade prototype based on Sonic 1, and they just crash. So, Wood Zone. This one's really interesting. I didn't want to get to these special ones right away. Did I lose debug mode? Am I doing something wrong? I'm not sure where debug mode is exactly, but we're going to try it again. Okay. Oh, I might have to hold A... Again, the instructions are all different. There we go, we're in debug mode. Which we're going to kind of need to explore Wood Zone. So, if you're not familiar with this stuff, there are a lot of cut zones from Sonic 2. Hidden Palace Zone is the most famous one that ended up being brought back to life, resuscitated, if you will, in Christian Whitehead and Stealth's remaster of Sonic 2 for mobile. Wood Zone is one of those acts that was cut completely and is kind of lost in the mythology of Sonic development that never really saw the light of day. So it was cut fairly early on, and you're going to see that not a lot of work was done on it really at all. I'll get as far as I can here. That is a bug, so we do actually need debug mode to explore this at all. And the level just ends here. So, really not a whole lot done on this stage at all, but it's really interesting to take a look at, so I'm going to go ahead and fly around a little bit here. You can see some of the graphics and some of the palettes. There's a lot more going on up here, above the stage, above where you start. So let's kind of explore some of that. You can see a little platform Sonic just runs over. Little conveyor belts like you would see in Casino Night. They are non-functional, so you can just kind of walk along them as though they're just normal platforms. And then it just stops along with, I believe, more or less everything else in the act. We don't get anywhere past that point. Some additional layers of scrolling background for no reason. And I think we're kind of back to where we started. So, as you can see, really barely any work done on Wood Zone. But this is, in terms of, you know, unused Sonic content, about as mythical as it gets. Aside from Hidden Palace, which we now have brought back to life and isn't as fun anymore, I guess. Kudos to Taxman and Stealth for bringing it back, though. That had to be a little risky, I would imagine. Let's take a look at Act 2 quickly, which is just a whole lot of absolutely nothing, if you can believe it. There's just nothing going on here. We'll just fly around, but there's literally, this is completely empty aside from a solid background color. You want to talk unfinished, this is literally as unfinished as it gets. You can see we're going all the way to the right of the stage. I don't know how long we keep going before it ends, but there you go. That's Wood Zone. we might see a little bit more of that as we progress here. So, here's Metropolis Zone up next. I think I'm actually going to skip around a little bit to these zones I know are finished before we go any further. Unless you want me to go in order. Now we're gonna go in order here. So Metropolis Zone is next. In a relatively sort of finished state. The pistons sort of work. They don't throw you as high as they do in the final release. And I apologize up front if I sound a little nasally. I have been sick this week. If you watched our most recent stream, you may recall that. So the pistons don't get you up there, which means I need debug mode, which I didn't activate, so I have to go ahead and reset this. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and take a look at this again. Shadowbane's curious about Dust Hill. We'll get to Dust Hill, don't you worry. That's one of the other, maybe even more... Okay, yep, take it easy. A few bugs to work out. Perhaps Dust Hill is even more mythical than Wood Zone, as you'll see if you're not familiar with the concept. With Shadowbane, this is fun. We're gonna reveal things to people. I don't know that there's any rings in this act at this point, but as you can see, the layout is mostly complete. I'm gonna go ahead and drop one for myself. These pipe things work, sort of. And the layout is more or less there. There are some differences if you're savvy about, nice. So that's mean. Stuff can kill you, but I don't have rings to defend myself. For the sake of exploring. I broke it. I'm not great at debug mode. Just a fair warning. And I guess... Is the stage just in there? We're gonna be a piston flying around. Alright, so we're mostly finished with Metropolis, I guess. It doesn't really... It just kind of stops, I guess. Boom. Let's head over to Act 2. Which is gonna kind of be more of the same. With, again, non-functional lava, just these betas do not like lava. Maybe Sonic Team... They just really did not feel like making that lava work. Maybe it was a challenge. They're lazy. They don't want it. There are some weird clipping issues with slopes sometimes. I'm going to try to recreate that. I guess not. Mad Gear, anybody? That's where it all comes from, you know. So we can just kind of tear through these. Some weird issues with the platforms there. There's clearly some work to do. So we're just going to kind of skip ahead a little bit. Do these screws work? Oh, nice frame rate. It's not happy about something. The screws do work. We're going to keep moving here. Try to show off a little more of the stage. Again, no rings, so... Metropolis, obviously not as far along as some of the other zones, but it's getting there. I love flying around with a little piston. We have some question mark graphics. Things are not as fleshed out as they could be yet. But we're getting there. So let's keep moving. So you can see things kind of clip into each other. The conveyor belts do work here. And that's, I believe, where the level should end, but there's no goalpost, so it just kind of stops, and we can kind of scroll down through the rest of it. And you'll see that there's really nothing here. Just admire the background and die, Sonic, die. We have power. How about Act 3? Nico So, lava is love. You're absolutely right about that. So I believe this may just be... I was going to say this may just be Act 1 again, but if I recall correctly, didn't Metropolis have 3 unique acts? So maybe I'm wrong on that. Now here's something you won't find in the final game. There's a funky little diagonal lift like this that doesn't quite work with walls and such. Oops. But is in the beta, and it's not in the final game. So something unique you can only see right here. And that's more or less all the interesting stuff going on in Metropolis Zone. So we'll go ahead and get to the next one. You'll also notice that there's no Sega chime, or Sega chant to start this up. It's widely believed that whoever got a hold of this demo hacked it so that the Sega chant was taken out of the very beginning of the game. So let's go ahead and go into Hilltop Zone, which we should find in a much better state than we saw it last. Still no sound effects on that thing, but the lifts do work. I guess I screwed debug mode up again. So let's try that again. A pretty large amount of development was done between the very unfinished Nick Arcade prototype and this. You can see that lava does work now, and that enemy is here now. I don't know if that's the final sprite design or not. I can't recall, but that's all there. These things still don't work, and they're actually a little buggier than before. I just run into them anyway, because I'm reckless and stupid, and I don't care. You can't make me. Boing. Boom. Dead. Happy. So, Hilltop is more or less, if not finished, then mostly there. I'll give Act 2 a quick look. There's debug mode. Okay. That still doesn't quite work. You can see, though, that it's much more polished, aside from some freaky ring layout, I guess. I'm a platform now. Something's hitting checkpoint. I can't get through that thing, so we're just going to do that. I'm not sure if those rings are the result of something I did, or if the beta put them there for some reason. But they're showing up a lot. So much easier to traverse when you have debug mode on. It's true. So we have the earthquake going on. No sound effect for it yet. But if I recall, it may actually go ad nauseum, which is to say that the earthquake effect doesn't stop. And I'm going to test that out. Oh, no, it does. Okay. It may just be infinite when you're in the room itself. I can't quite recall. It's been a while since I've looked at these betas, to be quite frank with you. I did do my homework before jumping headfirst into this, though. Thank you, Tails. Who needs rings anyway, you know? And there's your really glitchy goalpost. And again, I can move Tails around freely here because he just mimics Sonic's actions. So we move into the Emerald Hill, I guess. That might just be the game automatically putting us back at the first act of the game. Because it is absolutely not next. Hidden Palace is next. I've been neglecting the chat here, so what do you have to say about this? Start and select. Welcome. I think you're a new face here. Metropolis does have 3 acts. You are right. I spaced them out a little bit. Rare Foil is noting Genocide City, and I will get to Genocide City. Shadowbane, Loopy doing beta cappella music. Here, keep going with that. What else? Lou McGroove. Don't you tempt me. So, Hidden Palace. I'm sorry to kind of burst the bubble here, but you're going to notice that Hidden Palace is very similar to what it was in the Nick Arcade prototype. It benefits from the overall work that's been done on the game and the engine since the Nick Arcade prototype. You can see the Tails monitor is still here. Still gives Sonic an extra life, because why not? Again, I forgot to turn debug mode on, which would have been great for this stage, because we could have actually explored the rest. Maybe Act 2. And you'll see it really just kind of looks the same, I guess. This might be the one where we can get 100 rings and queue up the audio glitch here. I don't screw this up, and I didn't. There we go. Okay. So yeah, like I said, 100 rings queues up the Death Egg theme, and that might go for all eternity here until we're done, so. Enemies respawn pretty aggressively. Really not a good fit for the stage at all. So you can see it ends in the exact same place with the exact same stuff going on. I don't even know that the ring layouts were altered. So it's pretty much the same deal. Put on debug mode for Act 2 here. And again, it starts us in the same weird place, which turns out to just be, I believe, yeah, just somewhere odd with that. So I'm going to be a little badnik as I run around here. So again, it's the exact same thing that we saw in the Nick Arcade beta. Missing graphics here. Weird ring layout that doesn't make any sense. If there are any rings at all, in fact. And we can just kind of cruise through this. And see some fun. There's even some fun parallax up at the top here. They got really far on this act really early on and then just completely abandoned it. Which makes me sad. So, we can actually go through the tube now. Oh no, we can't. But thanks to debug mode, we can. And it's just a sad, sad void to everyone's ultimate demise. How about that? It still thinks I'm underwater, so let's fix that. It thinks I'm upside down, also. The theory behind, in part, why Hidden Palace Zone was scrapped was they wanted to do kind of a wraparound thing, where, kind of like in Labyrinth Zone, you would keep going like this, back and forth forever. But they also wanted to do some underwater stuff with it, and they had this weird... And I spawned a dude upside down. How about that? And he hurts me. You jerk. And now he's just gonna sit there. Oh, he's coming back! Die! So they also wanted to do these kind of fun water slide things, which don't work, and may have actually been included in the remastered version. I can't recall, but I think this is actually the end of the act completely. There's an underwater bit. Okay. Just kind of off by itself, it looks like. Let's take a little look at this. That stuff flashing underwater even looks really cool. There was a lot of cool graphical work done in this act that just got totally ignored and blown away. So that's a little unfortunate. How about Oil Ocean? So, different music. Very clearly wrong. But again, the act is at least partially complete. You can see these fun little rolling ball things that don't actually hurt Sonic. And the oil does work. Not in debug mode, so that's a little tricky to get out. Remind me to just set debug mode every time. I have to manually put it on every time I want to go into an act, which is kind of annoying, because I do forget a lot. There we go. So let's take a look at this act a little further. We can see a lot of it works. Those platforms, disintegrate underneath you. The little things that shoot you up actually shoot you up. They don't have the effect that hurts you yet. And I'm not sure there's any enemies yet either. The oil slicks do not work, which admittedly looks a little silly. But there is a fair bit of the act here, if I recall correctly. So you can kind of go through this thing, hit that. It brings out a ball, I believe. That little tricky thing hiding. And, I mean, as with a lot of these acts, the rings just kind of drop off at some points, and you can really clearly see that they were just kind of actively working on this stage, and it was just basically in whatever state they left it when they built this demo, it looks like. So it's really kind of fun to just see the act in whatever, unintentional state it was in at the time. Really bizarre and fun look into just like a snapshot of the stage's history of development. No one was ever meant to see this outside of Sonic Team. And now it's our privilege to get to have some fun and explore it. I don't know if these work yet. Now I'm just on a platform. These do work. That's interesting. And there you go. No signpost to wrap the act up. And this is actually the boundary of it, I suppose. So they did have the level more or less designed out at this point. And that is Oil Ocean. There's another act, so I guess we'll go ahead and take a look at this quickly. So here we go. Just kind of throws you into nothing because you're supposed to go through that. Or maybe the stage is designed differently, I can't remember. That just happened. There's a lot of weird, quirky collision bugs you'll find as you kind of work your way through the stage. That does work. And that's just weird. Sonic Advance 3, eat your heart out. I remember the Advance series kind of loving those things, 3 in particular. What else? Again, it's just kind of the state that Oil Ocean is in. You can see level design is more or less there. Again, those things aren't working. And we can just kind of take it through to the end. Rings fall off after a certain point in a lot of places. Again, just whatever state the game happened to be in at the time. There are some minor graphical changes as well. Some differences between this and the final, but it's been too long and I can't remember exactly what they are. So, you know, you may have a boss fight here, you may not. Just a bunch of stuff. Graphics and stuff! Nikos, the only frustration I have with this level is they changed the music on the re-release. I think this one fits the level better. I think he's talking about Hidden Palace, and that's a matter of opinion. Now, Dust Hill. So, what's really interesting about Dust Hill is this is sort of the legendary lost stage, right? Mock-ups of Sonic 2, if you've ever gone around on the internet. Some of the first mock-up images shown of the game include Emerald Hill, Hidden Palace, and a weird desert level that was never completed. In fact, never included in any known beta of the game because it really was just kind of a mock-up at that point. So, a lot of people, you know, see Dust Hill Zone in this beta's level select and assume it was that desert zone. But if you actually load up Dust Hill, it's Mystic Cave in a very kind of awkward state of completion in that it's more or less just serving as an object test bed at this point. You'll see a debug mode again. I'll just kill myself. You'll see that it's kind of a dumping ground for stuff right now. Give myself a couple rings because the stage, I don't believe, will do that for me. You can see some weird graphics there. So let's take a look at this. Thanks, Tails. There's some objects being tested. You can see some boxes happening there, just whatever the hell that is. Some stuff going on up here. You can see maybe this will work. Doesn't. Again, just a lot of items being tested all around the place. And some of the rest of the act is here. At least some of it, I believe. And lots of buggy graphics as well. I'm gonna give myself some rings. Keep doing that. It's B to get out of debug mode, not A. And again, just sort of an act in an unfinished state. This one's pretty rough compared to some of the other ones we've seen. Very unpolished and unfinished at this point. Again, just kind of serving as that initial object test bed. So they were really, I guess, just sort of getting a feel for how the gimmicks of the act would work. While the shell of the level is here, there isn't much beyond that. Obviously, no goal ring or goal post. So we'll go ahead and get back into the level select and take a look at Act 2, which will probably just have more of the same here. No object testing and just kind of a very blank, unfinished level. No rings, I don't believe. No stage hazards, just the very kind of crux of the level, such as it is. It's not going to give us a whole lot to kind of play around with. But again, you kind of get a feel for the game in its varying states of completion, and this is definitely an act that they were very much in progress with. Some nice bottomless pits here for you. I'm just going to cruise on through some of this here. Get a feel for some of the design. And again, we're just kind of at the end. No boss to speak of. Does the tile set loop here? It does not. Okay. So there's Mystic Cave quickly. Not so finished, but that's to be expected. Here's an interesting one, Casino Night. So, it's technically here, and more or less, you know, existing, but look how different it is. There's a lot going on here, so almost the entire graphical set is totally different. It looks more like almost Spring Yard to some degree, with like the weird buildings and things in the background, or maybe Starlight, one or the other. And just a lot of weird, unused graphics, a ton of pink, almost no core level design to speak of. You just kind of fall off a lot. So we absolutely are going to need debug mode here. Obviously the conveyor belts aren't working. This one almost just kind of feels like a mishmash of elements that the stage would later use. It might get a little more developed as we continue on here. But there's just this one is so different. So you really get the sense that they may have put Casino Night together sort of in a hurry. So, none of this is working, obviously. And it's just amazing how different it was at this point in the game's development. If I remember correctly, here you can see the elevators, or the shell of them, they're not quite working yet. At all, really. I believe, if I remember reading correctly, it's interesting palm trees there. This was taken from, or rumored to be taken from Bumpers at Work, a demo that was lying around in the summer of 1992, so this was just a couple months away from the game's release, and Casino Night is in this state. Gotta appreciate how hard they worked to bring this game to market in such a crazy, flustered business environment. So much different. If you can hear the music, too, the instrumentation is almost completely different. I'll shut up for a little bit and turn it up so you can hear it. So just a very, very different Casino Night zone from the one that we get in the final released version of the game. You can see just how cluttered and unfinished the level looks. Tons of gimmicks either don't exist or don't work yet. This is as work in progress as you'll see of a finished zone of the game anyway. You can see these are the launchers. They don't work at all. Not even remotely present, actually. There's a little push and bug for you. Dropping out of the stage. So, a really unfinished shell of it is there, but there's really not a whole lot beyond that. A ton of that repeating pink stuff. If there's any real graphical change that I'm happy they made is that they took all this pink out of Casino Night, because it is pretty glaringly awful to look at. All things considered. So we're just going to kind of keep looking around here. It's just so unfinished and so unpolished. I think it's fascinating. I don't know if you guys agree, but this is some really cool stuff. Now we're just starting the thing. That's why they have debug mode. Can you imagine trying to navigate this without debug mode? I think it might actually be impossible. Tails just flying all over the place. There. Oh, it did die. Okay. So there's a real general look at Act 1. No. Here's Aquatic Ruin, but we'll get there. I want to take a look at... No! I want to finish Casino Night. Dang it. So... even weirder, there's all sorts of messed up background elements here. I can't even recall how much this relates to the actual layout of Casino Night Act 2. But man, look how unfinished this is. Pinball background, the cityscape from Act 1 is completely gone, I believe. It's just this the whole way through, and it barely scrolls. So I don't know if it's mapping something incorrectly, or if this was actually the background at some point, and they thought that was a good idea. You thought Act 1 was sparse and weird looking. There is next to nothing happening here. And again, you can hear the really messed up instrumentation. These don't work in the slightest. It's just a whole bunch of random crap strewn about in this stage. It really is just a cluttered mess. A fascinating cluttered mess, but a cluttered mess nonetheless. Kind of stuck there. It's really hard to decipher, in a sense, what's background and what's foreground sometimes, because it all just blends together and there's almost no differentiation between the tile sets. It's absolutely ridiculous. There's one comment that it sort of looks like Collision Chaos in Sonic CD. You're not wrong about that. The color palettes are similar. The just kind of menagerie of stuff is pretty similar. I wouldn't be surprised if, because Sonic 2 and Sonic CD were rather heavily intertwined at points in their development, I wouldn't be surprised if there was at least some level of inspiration for Collision Chaos taken from this early version of Casino Night. You can draw some very faint parallels, and it would be kind of a stretch to say that, but I wouldn't actually be surprised if that was the case. We'll likely never know. But, oh man, look at this. Again, you can see shades of how the final act was going to work, like with those sort of pinball-y things dumping you out into conveyor belts and things like that. Some poker imagery there. Now this is just an absolute mess. Oh, look at this. What's background? What's foreground? That's the foreground graphics in the background and the background graphics in the foreground. Oh, I'm so confused. Somebody hold me. What is going on? So this is probably one of the most interesting unfinished acts in any Sonic beta, really. Just to show you how completely different it was. And again, we were never supposed to see this. Which is just super cool. And now I think we're finally out of stage. So go figure. Boom. Alright, what's next? Chemical Plant is next. Not as fun, because this, you know, was one of the first zones that they worked on, but it is in a much more complete state than we saw it last. I believe. It better be. Here's some sound effects. Loops and things are working as they should. I believe. All these pipe things are working properly now. It's happening. I see a lot of stuff in the comments here, so what do we have? Great baseline, we made a comment here. Some stuff about Hidden Palace. Shadowbane, Mystic Cave. Imagine if this stage were a Sonic 4 stage. We'd be hopping from front path to back path. That's right. And a little bit of a Casino Street vibe from Sonic 4. You were right on that, I think. Shadowbane also, I'd lay money down the Casino Street was based off this here, Who's With Me, and maybe those things do work now. So you can see Chemical Plant more or less, if not finished, then pretty close to it at this point. I believe this was one of the 4 playable in the overall demo. Like I said, there's 4 relatively complete zones you can explore, so I'm not going to spend too much time with Chemical Plant. Genocide City. So this is a really interesting zone. If we load it up here, it's Chemical Plant's music, and it's completely empty. I didn't hit debug mode? Okay. So, Genocide City was, again, one of the early stages that happened to get cut before really much of any work was done on it. So I'll just kind of leave this here and let you stare at this beautiful background. It's well thought out that, despite the awesome name, I think, for as bad as the connotation is, Genocide City is a hell of a name for a zone. Like, if you want to get the blood pumping, that's what you name it. And what's interesting about Genocide City is it's largely thought to be a mistranslation. The actual name of the zone, as it was kind of thought out, was Cyber City. And if you go around on the internet and look some of this stuff up, you'll see that there were some sketched out graphic designs done for it by one of the Americans on the Sonic 2 team. And it looked a lot like the Machine level called the Machine in Sonic Spinball. As a matter of fact, the graphics that were going to be used for Cyber City / Genocide City, whatever, were later used, I believe, for the Machine in Sonic Spinball. And now I'm second-guessing myself, because it's either the Machine stage or the one that comes right before it in Sonic Spinball. I can't actually remember what it is. So, Genocide City is just 2 acts of absolute nothing. There have been fan mock-ups in fan games that kind of bring Genocide City back to life, but none of them really match the original vision of the game. So Neo Green Hill Zone is the original name for Aquatic Ruin. You can see a little bit of flicker as we load the zone up. Aquatic Ruin is relatively complete as well, if I recall it correctly. I'm not sure if there's enemies necessarily, but you're going to see there's a lot of those weird lines of rings. I'm not sure if that's something that I did wrong, or if the game is just putting them there because it's loading some kind of graphic incorrectly. If anyone knows that in the chat, that might be worth speaking up about. I'm just going to kind of accelerate this a little bit. Looks like I'm on the other track. There we go. Nice little buggy animation for you. Those things do work, and we're out of the stage already, so just kind of control Tails here. He runs on a little bit of a delay, obviously, from Sonic's movement. And we're going to keep moving here. No enemies in the stage. There are rings. I'm not sure the degree to which this was all completed. I mean, in terms of the ring layout and everything, but it's fairly close, except for all that crap, I guess. Wow. There's a lot of that dangling around. So many misplaced rings. And they're not solid either. Maybe it's a remnant of debug mode, I'm not sure. Because I believe you can place those objects. So again, more or less the aquatic room we know, except for that part, that obviously... Again, you have to kind of struggle to get off the screen sometimes. What else? Death Egg Zone. We know there's an Act 1. Oh dear! Well, would you look at that. Absolutely nothing going on in Death Egg Zone, at least in Act 1. And no music either. You want to talk about creepy. That's just frightening. Spooky as hell, man. Nothing going on here. Special stage? Cannot select the special stage. They thought that through. Back to Death Egg quickly. And I hit the wrong button again. What else we got here? Sound select works. And here you can kind of get a feel for how different the instrumentation was at this point. This is Wing Fortress. So you can see, we actually didn't see Wing Fortress or Sky Chase at this point in the game's development. We will in the last beta I have to show you. This one I actually kind of like. And you can hear how different the Supersonic theme is. Sounds much more like an alarm, not as inviting necessarily. So, that brings us to one more beta to take a look at before we wrap up for the evening here. But I'm going to take this opportunity to take a quick break. We will be right back with more TSSZ Plays, the Sonic 2 betas, right here on twitch.tv/TSSZ News. Don't go anywhere. Okay, everybody, welcome back. The trivia question this time around, according to Sonic Retro, how many betas of Sonic 2 are known to exist? I didn't see too many answers in the chat, but I'm not sure if we were having some chat difficulties here. There wasn't too much activity coming through for a little bit. The answer is, in fact, 7. C, 7 betas is the correct answer, and here's why. So, there are, as I said, 7 known prototypes of Sonic 2 known to exist. There was the Nick Arcade prototype, which was the first one that we took a look at. The Simon Y beta, which we're still putting on the screen right now. And then 5 numbered betas. Numbered Beta 4, Beta 5, Beta 6, Beta 7, and Beta 8. Which were internally referenced as such by Sega. For a grand total of 7. So again, I couldn't take a lot of answers from the chat there, because it may have crapped out on me here. Rarefoil, Lou, a lot of what you're saying was already confirmed in interviews. That's fine. You know, people might not know that. It's okay to repeat it. So, with all of that in mind, we're going to start taking a look at the final beta that I have here to show you. So once we get up to the numbered betas in Sonic... I was going to say Sonic 4. In Sonic 2, it's more or less the game in a pretty finished state. There are some minor differences, but by and large, not too much is going on. That's crazy different. So, this is... I just picked out one of the numbered betas here. This is Beta 5, I believe. So you can see that the finished title screen is there. Not doing so well with the stage select, so I'm going to have to try to navigate this. You can see a lot's been changed up here. Boy, I didn't think this one through. How do I get into hold A on level? We have title cards now. We're in debug mode. Let's go. So you can see that this is more or less the game as we're going to remember. There are going to be some small differences here and there, but you could fool yourself into thinking we're playing the actual game here, so I'm just going to kind of speed along through a lot of this. There are some very minor differences in terms of, you know, beta to beta, what's changed in these later ones, but I definitely can't remember those all offhand, so if you want to check those out in more detail... We have some interesting, different animation there for the invincibility. You can see that they fixed the bug with the extra life music. If you want to learn more about these later betas, you can go ahead and go over to Sonic Retro, where a lot of this information is. You can look up the Sonic 2 betas. In fact, if you just Google it, it's going to be pretty much the first chunk of stuff that comes up. So I'm not going to go through that again. That's more or less what you would expect at this point. So, Nikos, let's take a look at more clues. That's pretty much what it feels like sometimes, right? Oh, this is a disaster. Okay, so they're obviously still playing around with the overall level layout and how it's going to flow throughout the game. Let's take a look at Metropolis. Last we left it, it was not in good shape, all things considered, and now it's more or less done. So we can kind of plow through some of it. That's all there. You know, we didn't see even a hint of that in the Y prototype. But this is more or less the level that you would expect. Like I said, once we get to the numbered betas, it really is not as fun. The spin dash is totally fine. I phased through the guy, but, you know, whatever. The numbered betas really are not as fun to look at from a purely, wow, this is so different perspective. But they kind of will give you some insight into how the game was sort of polished up for release in terms of smaller, more minute changes, which again aren't really as fun to go into, so I'm not going to go into crazy detail here. And as you can see, not a lot of things are sticking out as different at this point. These later betas more or less showcase the game in a polished, finished state with just a few tweaks and bugs to work out. So, you know, we're gonna... is getting into debug mode different now? How do I do this? I'm in debug mode. but I can't just start placing items. That might have been removed, actually, now that I think about it. I know at some point, I think that functionality went away. But I can't recall when. Feel free to call me on that. I might be wrong. So yeah, there's Metropolis Zone. All the rest of the acts are more or less that way. I'm wondering if the... That's right. Next up here, we got more going on. Don't you worry. We got a whole bunch of stuff to run through here. I can't even see what zone this is. Hilltop. Okay. So Hilltop is still very mean, as you can see. And what else? Again, this is just more or less... Thanks, Tails. The game, as you remember it, Hilltop is pretty much done at this point, I believe. So, you can see, I believe that starting text is different as well. It says Sonic and Tails in. So this is... not selectable for some reason. The act directly underneath Hilltop I was trying to access and I could not. Let me see if I did something wrong there or if there actually is a mistake with that. Let's see. I'm prone to doing things wrong on occasion. It's not a foreign concept. Yeah, I'm not sure if that says Hidden Palace or what, but I can't get into that zone at all. So, onto Oil Ocean. You can see the correct music is here. It starts off all nice. Everything's here just like you'd expect. No! I don't want any. There's fire under those things that shoot upward. Again, this is more or less the finished zone. The oil's a little more slippery underneath here. I'd like to check and see if the oil slicks work at this point. But I think I'm going to have to bounce around a little bit before we can figure that out. Get farther in the stage here. I'm in a slick under there. You can kind of see. Maybe it's tough to see, but it is difficult to control Sonic in that moment. In the oil slick, so I'm assuming all of that works. I have no reason to doubt it otherwise. If the chat has been hanging up and not processing things, if you were trying to... Oh, and there's a bug. If you're trying to shout things at me, try to shout it again. I keep resetting it every now and again to make sure I'm not missing anything. Oh, man. I forgot that talking for an hour and a half coming off of some infection is not easy on your throat. So again, apologies if I sound less than 100%. And there's the oil slicks and everything. Works just fine. Do we have a special stage, though? We do! Check it out, folks! Whee! Nice. Okay. So you can see the special stages here as well. More or less working. Again, I can't recall the absolute intricacies of what's different. So if anything is glaringly obvious that's changed, feel free to shout out. I'm just going to kind of poke through this, I guess. And again, Oil Ocean, like most of the stages, I guess, at this point, is pretty much completed. It's pretty much minor bug fixes and polishing at this point in this development cycle, as far as this beta is concerned, and most of those later betas are concerned, as a matter of fact. So, not a whole lot left here. Sadly. Nope. That didn't look so great. It loads up a little bit of the half pipe ahead. Tails can't lose rings for you. Although I think that's removed in regular gameplay. I'm not sure if you can do that in the actual special stage. There's a lot I don't remember about Sonic 2. Can't think of it. Nah. Oh, that's such a tease. You're so mean to me. Shadowbane, wasn't there a Sonic 2 commercial many moons ago that had something about welcome to the next level with these special stages? It's absolutely possible. I would imagine that they would want to hype them up because... Oh, and we're going to follow them all the way down. I don't think that happens in the final game. I believe there was, yes, Shadowbane. I wouldn't be surprised. It's pretty impressive graphically for 1992 on a console, and I would imagine that they would want to shout that to the high heavens. So, it's still called Dust Hill in the level select, but it's clearly Mystic Cave Zone, and it's, again, pretty clearly more or less finished at this point. You can see traces of that old level design that we saw in the Simon Y beta. But by and large, you know, the act is pretty much done. Maybe a couple little graphical oddities that need cleaning, and we're down there. I don't want to deal with this. So we'll keep looking ahead here. I'm looking down at the chat. The tablet's been repositioned. You're gonna get sick of that song by the end of this if you're not already. Casino Night Zone, and what a surprise! It actually looks like it should. Again, some weird collision detection issues every now and then. Oh, now get ready to go fast. There's just so much of this level you can tear apart. Lots of work done on this level, obviously. Some of those old graphics remaining, you can see that little flowery thing over here remains. But by and large, you know, this zone more or less completely rebuilt from the ground up. And they did a pretty nice job with it. Man, and it really makes you appreciate how much of a ripoff of this zone Casino Street is from Sonic 4. It's almost the exact same thing. Not happy about that ring bump there. That is not... Do not adjust your set. That is not a problem with your machine. That is not a problem with my emulation. Or the stream. The frame rate was actually that bad, so... You can see that it's a much more finished game, but one that still clearly needs a little bit of work and love to make it out the door. In a more polished state. One that you would want to happily put on store shelves. No more pink, Nikos. You're absolutely correct on that. Again, apologies if I missed some stuff in the chat prior, whether or not there were difficulties or not. I don't know. Rare Foil might have been saying something that I missed. Again, now we're just basically watching Sonic 2 with some funky little bits strewn about here and there. You'll get the odd collision detection issue. You'll get the odd clipping through something or other. But it's all more or less here. We're going to go through all the rest of the stages on the level select just to kind of be thorough. Chemical Plant we've seen over and over again. It's pretty much done at this point. Here's Aquatic Ruin. I think it was still called Neo Green Hill Zone. You're going to see that these pillars are in now. All of the enemies are in. Their behaviors are here. So the act is a lot meaner in that regard. But it all goes toward a product that feels much more finished. It's a little more alive now, which is the point of the exercise here, I do believe. So we've got the bubbles intact underneath. You know, we're going to start drowning soon if I don't pick something up. A little bit of discoloration down there. Note that it didn't actually start playing the drowning theme, so... something to consider. Maybe that's a good thing, depending on your view of the drowning theme. So there's a little bit of Aquatic Ruin there. We're going to keep going down the list. Got some more stuff going on here. What else? Sky Chase. So, haven't seen it in any beta prior to this, but here it is in all its slow, meandering glory. again, you kind of really get a feel for how much of a rip-off Sonic 4 is in some regard. This is... It's almost a carbon copy. Sky Fortress Act 1 and Sonic 4 Episode 2 is just this again. But probably worse. With much more repetitive music. So we're not going to bore you with Sky Chase. That goes on and on for quite some time. Oh, my nose, my throat, my everything. Trucking through this for all y'all. This is fun. Note that Wing Fortress is considered basically Sky Chase Act 2. We have the cutscene in here. And it's more or less Wing Fortress. Oh dear. Ha. This bit really... I mean, Sonic 4 just ripped off some of this wholesale, didn't it? This is crazy. Don't you love bottomless pits? Shadowbane. I think in Generations I died underwater a few times in Seaside Hill. Yeah. We've all been there. And also, Sonic 4 was basically Sonic 2, the Lost Levels. Yeah, more or less. I mean, Sonic 1 and 2, the Lost Levels, maybe. The shiny 3D version. Whoa. Do these hurt me? They don't. Check that out. So we're not totally done with this stage. But it's getting there. Nico So, Sky Chase, beautiful music. It is calm and peaceful. That is a fact. Oh boy. Death Egg. No debug here. How finished are we? No tails, which I believe is correct. Boop. This looks pretty much done. I'm not gonna go ahead and beat the boss. Because I don't know that I can. It's been a while. I think we just have 1 or 2 more stages to look at here. And then we're pretty much done. And so you can imagine then that the rest of the betas, Beta 4 all the way through, Beta 6, 7, and 8, more or less mirroring this. And the special stages load, so we've got a pretty polished product here. Pretty polished product as your alliteration for the night. And there we have it, folks. You have gone on a really fun journey with us as we looked through a lot of the betas of Sonic the Hedgehog 2 on the Sega Genesis. If you liked this little adventure that we went on, do let me know. I would love to sort of dig into more betas of Sonic games in the future and put those on streams as well. It's kind of a fun little one-off way to break up the action between our ongoing Let's Plays, which I thought was a lot of fun. So, again, hopefully you had fun with this little look. Sonic 2 is one of the most interesting games in the Sonic franchise beta-wise, and I'll actually put in a little plug for some stuff that's been going on over at Retro, I believe, recently. If you haven't been following that too much, I wanted to do a write-up for it on the site, and I just didn't have time this week. A bunch of people found a beta version, alpha version, possibly, of Sonic Unleashed on the Xbox 360, where it is super unfinished. And it's kind of crazy how much is left over in that. So if you haven't heard about that at all, definitely head on over to Retro's forums, look it up on the internets. It's all there to some degree. Definitely worth checking into. Alright, let's see. We have some affirmation in the comments. This was a good time for some of you, and I'm really glad that's the case. Again, we may be doing some additional game betas as time goes on. Coming up on Monday, when the Sonic Hero stream resumes, we'll be taking on Team Chaotix and beginning that, the light at the end of the tunnel, on that one. And from time to time, we'll be coming back to, like I said, some of the one-off episodes, playing some shorter games in the series, looking at some betas and some other weird stuff as well. So with that, I think we're going to go ahead and leave it for this evening. Go ahead And go over to strawpoll.me/TSSZ News. If you haven't been there recently, we do have some polls up that we're going to be taking a look at on Monday that are all relevant to Heroes once we start that stream again. So go ahead and take a look at that. Have a great night, everybody. Thanks a lot for joining us on this fun little jaunt. This has been TSSZ Plays the Sonic 2 Betas right here on twitch.tv/TSSZ News. Have a great night. Have a great weekend. And we'll see you right back here on Monday. Bye-bye. Da-da-da-da. Oh, those drums. Woo!